right. Does it show it started recording for y'all? Can I get a verbal confirmation?
Yeah, it shows this is recording.
Awesome. Then I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, so just a heads up, when I'm sharing my screen, I won't be able to look at the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and kind of pitch in. I want this skill session to be a little bit more interactive than just me talking at you. So there will be points when I stop and pause and ask a question. So feel free to participate. Your thoughts, your opinions, your comments, anecdotes, those really help. So some of you that are returning will probably have stories from your previous semesters that will help kind of drive the point home. So feel free to jump in on that. Today, we're going to talk about how to work effectively in remote teams. And considering the pandemic situation we're in and that a lot of our collaborative work has gone online, meetings, your teamwork, especially with something like EPICS that's, working in different phases, having that connection with your team members is really important. So today we're going to talk about some of the challenges that you will face with this current online setup and how we can tackle that effectively. So the first thing obviously is to anticipate that there will be challenges. This isn't something smooth. This isn't something that we're all used to. From last semester, there might be people who are a bit more seasoned with, using technology for collaboration instead of having that face-to-face connection that we're so used to. So I wanted to ask the returning students, what are some of your challenges that you experienced in the previous semester? And if you want to kind of pitch in with some examples of your own.
I found that one of the challenges my team faced was we got to the point where we were beginning to start prototyping in the lab, and then we were moved to a more online format, and like accessing the lab just wasn't as easy as it normally is. So not everybody could be in there at the same time working, and it just posed additional challenges. We also had an international student on our team that was beginning to prototype, so finding new ways to make sure that they were involved in the process still was challenging.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Having students that are distance learners in this course who chose to do the class from home instead of coming to the lab, it kind of adds that extra challenge of, okay, how can we segregate the work such that everybody has something to work on but doesn't necessarily need to be there? Any other stories or anecdotes?
Kind of going off of the issues with like people working remotely, I think when there's people in different time zones, that makes it a lot harder to just like find a common time that everyone can meet, and like that's like helpful.
Yeah, scheduling issues.
And just try to be courteous,
right,
to their schedule.
Great point. Yeah. Now I want to pass it on to the new students who haven't done EPICS before and sort of, talk about what do you think or what do you anticipate is going to be a challenge to work on your team. It can be something team specific, or it can be something that you think in general is going to be like, other new members are going to experience this issue as well. Come on, don't leave me hanging.
I think we're all returning students because this is a returning student PDH, unless they're 2 credit hours.
Oh, so there are students who sometimes take skill sessions for first time, but all right.
Okay.
Moving on then. So like some of you said, some of the points were already spoken about in the anecdotes that we just heard. Different time zones, lack of in-person interaction, especially with those that have, international students or distance learning students, some additional errors, or sorry, I was looking at the comics. Some additional issues that we'll be facing are technical issues. Obviously, you can't control the internet. You can't control your laptop if it decides to suddenly restart and, go for updates. That's something that can happen. Sometimes people face issues with their headphones. There are microphones, so those kind of things are something you can anticipate, but they're out of your control. Weak internet connection. Something that you may be able to remedy is your internet connection by trying to find a good spot. I personally had an issue with that in my apartment where the internet was so weak. I kept cutting in and out of calls, so I had to get an Ethernet port. So you can find fixes like that, or you could go to a place like a library where the connection is much more stronger, or is reliable, and you're not going to cut out of your meetings or your calls. So that can facilitate a better meeting session that you have with your team or project partner, or just in general any call that you're having. People and the environment around you. That's another thing that's out of your control. For example, say you're at your apartment, you're on a call, but you've obviously got roommates. Your roommates may have friends over, they're blaring music in the shower. Those things you can't control, but it's definitely helpful if you convey that message to your teammates or to the people that you're talking beforehand that, hey, if you hear some kind of background noise, just kind of ignore it. I apologize. This is the only place and time where I was able to sit and do that call. Different time zones, something we talked about, and then the lack of in-person interaction for team bonding. Now, this can be something in general for most teams as well, because you won't always have your meetings completely in person. Sometimes some people may prefer to be online if you're not at that prototyping stage, and if you're still in that conceptualization phase where you're trying to think about some ideas and you're brainstorming. Those meetings are more easily held online. But for teams that are in that phase, having that rapport with the rest of your team members might be difficult if you're not getting that face-to-face interaction with them. So those are some of the challenges. And now we're going to talk about different ways how we can overcome it and try to navigate these challenges. So effective communication, and that is obviously the first one, considering this entire setup, or the online setup. Obviously the biggest hurdle is having effective communication, so tackling that first and foremost is really important. Be transparent. How can you do that? You can make your team members aware of your situation and your availability. If some meeting times are not working for you, if you have a class or an exam during a certain week and you can't meet, make sure you convey that to your team members, because when you don't, and when you're the person that shows up late to meetings, or the person that's not active during meetings because you're trying to finish this homework that's due at midnight the same night, but you're just kind of on the call just to be there, then it kind of makes your team members think that you're not as reliable. Then you're not an approachable team member. They will lean on you less and less for getting stuff done, or for in general just kind of turning to for questions and for help. And that's not something you want if you're trying to build a good rapport with your team members, obviously. Regular status updates, that can be about the work that you're doing, or that can be just kind of checking in on your team members as well. So if you're working on a certain aspect of the project, say you're designing something that needs to be 3D printed. If you anticipate that it's going to be completed in 5 days, then you let your team members know, hey, I'm like halfway through, maybe it'll take me a day extra, or maybe I'll get done a day sooner because I had a free time slot open up. It's always helpful to let them know, because then if someone else's work kind of relies on it, and the person that is going to submit it for 3D printing, or someone has another part that depends on the dimensions of that 3D printing, can then start working on their stuff. So make sure that you're regularly communicating with each other, being transparent with each other, making your availability known, and ask for help when you need it. Don't always think that because you might be, lagging behind on some work, if you feel like you're a day behind on that task that you were supposed to complete because of some other prior commitment, then it's fine. As long as you're letting your team members know. And if it's something that's starting to become overwhelming for you, then that's when you lean on your team members, because they're a resource to you. So if there's something that you feel like is too much to tackle on your own, make sure that you're communicating that to your team members, so then you're all on the same page and you're not struggling all alone by yourself. The next one is to be approachable. This is really important because when you're working online, how you convey your your meaning, your intention is very different than how easily it is seen in person through body language, right? When you're in virtual meetings, sometimes a lot of us don't even have our cameras on, like right now, which is fine because I'm sort of presenting to you. But if you're having a meeting with your project partner off the side, or if you're meeting with your team members, and you're going to have your camera turned off and your mic turned off for the most part, and you're just kind of hopping in to say yes or no, or I think I agree, then that's not a lot of engagement, right? Your team members will probably think, oh, they don't care about the meeting. They might, not think that you're so interested to be there, or think that you have more important things to do. So try to portray your interactions as approachable, and use the language that promotes growth mentality. When I say that, I mean, a lot of us sometimes try to send texts on a group chat that's, like quick, like, okay, I got to do this, so I'll look at that later, or I can work on this right now because I've got an exam. And sometimes when we don't have that body language to rely on, those messages may come across as curt. And especially considering the fact that some of you may not even meet in person, and they won't know, your type of personality or the way you speak. If they're just going off of that text message, it might be even more misleading for them. So you want to try to, sugarcoat it a bit, but pad it with some sort of nice words like, hey, I apologize that I can't get to this right now. Is it possible that I can, work on it in a couple days? Maybe we can sit down together and figure this out if it's too overwhelming for me. So instead of just saying, I don't think I can do this, or I don't think I have the time to do this, it's kind of turning the words around a bit, making it sound a bit more professional, a bit more approachable, so you don't sound like someone who's like, yeah, that's not my ballpark. I don't want to work on this. I don't want to do this. You are a resource to your team, so you have to remember that if something is your specialty in your team, I'll go back to the 3D printing example. If you're very familiar with CAD packages, someone may have questions for you if they're trying to learn that resource. Be approachable to them. If they're gonna, ask you like 5 questions, be responsive to it. But obviously, you don't have to respond to those questions at 3 in the morning. You'll be setting your boundaries accordingly, but you still want to make them know that, hey, if you have questions, reach out to me, rely on me, because the progress of your project is a group interest. It's not an individual thing. You're all in this together, and you're all working toward a common goal. Be direct. Precise emails and texts. A lot of the times, people will send 5 emails one after another because they forgot to put something in the other, or they forgot to attach the latest updated version of something, which once or twice is fine. But if someone makes a habit of sending you 10 texts in a row, you'll probably be like, okay, like, calm down. Just put everything concisely. What do I need to know? Is it something I need to know for our next meeting? Is it something I need to know to complete the task I'm working on right now? But it basically takes out all of the white noise in the middle and gives people the information they directly need to know to get to their work. A great analogy that someone showed in a video that I'll share in a bit is that consider these emails like a knock on your door. So say you're sitting at your cabin at your workplace, and someone knocks on your door, asks you a question, walks away. 2 minutes later, comes back, knocks on your door, asks you the question, walks away, and you're like, listen, just come down, sit with me for 15 minutes, talk to me about what questions you have, and we'll sort it out in one go instead of you coming and going all the time. So try to compare it to that and keep your communication concise, so people aren't just going around in circles trying to figure out, okay, what did they ask then, and what happened to this email, and none of the communication is kind of slipping through the cracks and then lost. Be decisive, don't be vague. So if something needs to get done, and this is also really important for leadership, if something needs to get done and someone is not taking the initiative to do the task, or the team members that did take the initiative to take up the task are not quite working on it, you need to be direct and tell them, hey, if this work isn't going to be done in the next week, we're going to fall back on our deliverable, or we're not going to have anything in time for design review, so you're going to need to buck up. If you need help, let me know. And that approachability part comes in as well. So you don't want to be direct to the point where you're rude. You want to be approachable, you want to be respectful, but you want to make sure that the goals that you're all working towards are still met. So I want to take a pause here and ask y'all if you've had any issues with having communication amongst your teams, or if you have a good story about how a certain practice worked really well for your team members to try and effectively communicate in this situation. Dead silence. Come on, someone has to have some stories from their teams.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So if you have any comments or tips about effective communication, or any anecdotes that you might have from your own teams that you feel worked for you or didn't work for you and created issues in terms of communication.
Well, I have something I found that's really effective, at least through EPICS, is that we have this system where like we have the project manager and the design leads and their teams. I find that working from project manager to design lead and having, if there's any planning stuff, or if there's maybe a certain direction the design lead should take on that project, and the project manager wants to communicate that to the team instead of just communicating that to the whole project team. They just communicate it to the design lead, and then they have probably their own effective form of communication that they would be able to relay to their team. So I find that works the best.
All right, so like a hierarchical sort of message relay. So project managers to design leads, so the leadership has a conversation about the goals, and then it sort of trickles down from there.
Right.
All right, that's good. Any other useful tips that you feel like have worked for your team? Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Last year in my FYE team, the second semester, we had some troubles with their team before we went online, with like members not having initiative, I guess, and not communicating a lot, and those issues were kind of magnified by the online change. It was even harder to ask people what they were doing and get answers back.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. Something that gets amplified, thank you for bringing that up, is when people who are generally not very participative, or who kind of, follow the leader, or just waiting for things to happen and go with the flow. When things happen online, you need to take a lot more initiative rather than just sitting and waiting for someone to tell you to do it. So that part about transparency, regular status updates, that's really important in this scenario. You want to make sure that your team members, and this doesn't apply just to leadership, this also applies to like all general team members, to make sure that you're holding each other accountable. And we'll talk about accountability in a bit as well. Those status updates are important, so you make sure everyone's got something to work on, and everyone has got something to go off of, and no one's just kind of sitting and waiting to be told what to do. But there needs to be kind of that open channel of communication, like, are you okay with working on this? Do you need help on this? Let us know, when and where, and like we can sit together and figure it out. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Talking about accountability. So how can we make sure we're holding our team members accountable? How are we holding each other accountable? One of the best ways is meeting minutes or meeting notes. You can use those notes to take a note of what was discussed, maintain checklists to keep track of all the tasks that you are talking about. So, how you use a Gantt chart to talk about the different tasks that you plan on achieving throughout the different semester, and like what the timeline is. Another really helpful column to have is the person in charge of it, or the responsible entity. So if we know that person A is going to be working on drafting the design document, with person B and C, and then D and E are going to be working on the prototyping. That way everyone's got something to work on. Everyone can hold each other accountable. And then that's documented in Gantt chart as well. So this entire section kind of talks about how the Gantt chart will help you keep each other accountable and not just, plan the timeline, but also to sort of drive home the point that when you do your documentation in your notebook, now there's also the new tab of goals and action items. So you don't have to sort of try and fit in your work and accomplishment somewhere. You can literally make a checklist for yourself at the start of the week, like, these are the things I want to get done, or these are the things we as a team are hoping to get done. Where are we at the end of the week? And so you can compare it and can figure out for yourself, did we overestimate how long this will take? Did we underestimate? What do we need to keep in check? What are some of the hurdles and challenges? And then that kind of keeps everyone on the same page. That makes sure everyone knows, okay, at the last meeting, this is what we discussed. This is what we put down on our checklist. Who's going to do it? When it's going to happen? So then when you meet next, you know what to expect. And it's not kind of a surprise like, oh, I didn't know I had to complete the CAD model for that part. I thought this person was doing it. So make sure that it's all documented so you can hold each other accountable for it and everyone's on task. Regular check-in sessions. So I'm going to reiterate that point again, because in terms of accountability, that's important, right? You not only have those Gantt charts, but sometimes if certain tasks can turn out to be overwhelming for some team members who don't either feel comfortable in it or are doing it for the first time, it's important that you all check in with each other. One message in the group: how's everyone doing? How's the 3D printing coming along? Or how's the prototyping coming along? Are the materials here yet? Have we heard back from the project partner on so? Sometimes like a quick check-in over text helps. And this can be super useful when done during your team meetings, so that you're not sort of, wondering like what happened, where is everybody at with their tasks? Because a lot of the times that I've seen people who are getting used to working in teams, they will use the meeting time to work on their tasks. The most effective way to hold these meetings is to keep that as your check-in session and as your, update time, so that whatever work that you were supposed to do, you can do at your own flexible time whenever you're available to either work in tandem with the person that you're supposed to do it with, or if it was something that you were to do individually, then when you come onto the meeting, you can just give them the updates. This is what we did. This is what we had issues with. This is what we're planning to do differently next time. And then you can kind of get feedback from the rest of your team, like, hey, maybe we can use your help. You said you worked on this before, or maybe we could use more hands on the project because it's bigger than we thought it would be. So make sure to check in with people and kind of get that help when you need. The next one is consistency. This one's more sort of for yourself, to hold yourself accountable. Don't procrastinate on your work, because of the way EPICS is designed, and it doesn't have like homeworks every week or quizzes every week. It's easy to procrastinate and it's easy to lose track of your deliverables. So when you have to, enter a reflection in your notebook, make sure you're setting aside time for it like you would for any homework. When you have background research to do for anything that you're working on, or any product that you're looking up that you think you're going to need for your project, set aside a certain amount of time for it. So that time in the week is your, contribution toward the project. So it's not just like, oh, as and when the work comes, I'll take a look at it and we'll prioritize it at the bottom because we don't know where this is going yet. Make sure you're cutting out that time slot for yourself and you're holding yourself accountable, because then it's just a slippery slope, because you don't do week 1 reflections and you don't do week 2. Next thing you know, you're in week 6, it's midterm grade and you have to fill everything in from scratch into your notebook, and you don't remember what happened in week 2. So make sure you're staying on top of your tasks and you're staying on top of your deliverables, so you're not just letting things slide. And maintain a routine. yeah, that's the best way. If you tell yourself that this day, this time, based on, whenever you have your team meetings and you think you can give them an update, set aside that amount of time for yourself, give yourself that flexibility, and just be consistent with that. Continuous improvement and constant feedback. And this is important among team members. If there's a certain method of functioning within your team that doesn't work, it's hampering the progress of your project, it's definitely worth sitting down and talking about, and discussing, hey, what can we do differently so we're helping each other better? Because it's not just about, oh, I don't think, I feel comfortable doing this, so I'm just going to set aside and like watch you guys do it, because that's not how teams work, right? If something, some task that someone's asking you to do, you're not comfortable with it, or you're not aware of it, you want to make that known to them, so that, transparency part comes in. But also you want to give them feedback like, hey, I tried doing this by myself, it's not working. Can I get the help of someone? And then let's figure it out together. Even if it's something as small as like your weekly meeting times. I know everyone sets weekly meeting times at the start of the semester, but as you go through, you realize, okay, I have these lab reports that are due every Wednesday, so we can't have meetings then. Or I have exams, evening exams usually, that are scheduled during this day of the week, so I can't do it then. So it's okay to kind of talk to each other. Hey, these meeting times aren't working anymore. People are finding it difficult to join. So let's try and move that, and, give each other that feedback, and then you can continuously improve. So you're making sure that whatever your relations are with each other isn't hampering the progress of your team as a whole. So I'll stop here, and ask y'all if you have any great tips that have worked for you in terms of holding your team accountable, or even if it's one of these things that's here on the slide that you've used, that have worked particularly well for you.
So I have one. So one thing my team usually does is that after we discuss what we want to have done by next week, we usually put that in the chat or like in a group channel, so that if someone forgets, they can easily find the information of where they can like quickly review what we're expecting. So that always helps, since just in case someone forgets, it's always there.
Perfect. Yeah, documenting everything, putting it in a place where people just can't miss it. That's really helpful. Thank you for that. Any other comments? All right, then we'll move on to the next part. Don't overwhelm yourself. Because of how much more demanding this sort of setup is, it's easy to kind of lose yourself in, okay, I need to get this done, and I need to get that done, and just, this is another type of slippery slope where you're not giving yourself the time to step away and take some time for yourself and give yourself a break. So when you're setting those goals, for the tasks that you want to complete in the week, you want to be smart about it. And obviously you can see what that acronym stands for. An example that I always like to give, because people do this, is, okay, I am going to conduct background research on this thing, or let's say this component for the project. That's a new kind of either technology that's going to be used, or just any kind of product. Say you're trying to look for a certain type of battery that you're going to use. When you just say, okay, I'm going to do some background research, how much of that is quantifiable? How much of that can you actually tell yourself, this is how long it's going to take me, or this is what I'm going to do? It's not very. So you want to be specific. You want it to be measurable. You want it to be attainable, so you don't want to do too much in the too little time that you assign to yourself. Obviously, it has to be relevant to whatever the work you want to do, and give it a time frame. So one way you can make this background research thing more smart is, you can say, all right, these are the different types of batteries I know there are, so I'm going to look into at least 2 different resources for each of them. So that gives you something specific, right? That gives you something measurable. So you can measure that these are the like 5 or 6 websites that I'm going to look at that's going to give me the information for these batteries. Is it attainable? Am I sorry, am I going to do this in 2 hours? Am I going to do this in 2 days? That's a goal you have to set for yourself, right? That's when you give yourself that time-based portion. Is this, you know, going to be achievable for me? Am I going to be able to complete this background research that I want to in the time that I set myself? So that you're making sure it doesn't go so hard on yourself, but at the same time, you're getting the work done in a reasonable amount of time. So leave room for flexibility. That's something people always forget to do. And that kind of ties in with the procrastination piece. You don't want to do that to yourself, because obviously EPICS isn't the only course you're taking. You have other classes, you're going to have other homeworks, and your personal commitments as well, things that you do, you know, for your mental health, maybe to just take a break. So you don't want to backload everything and leave everything for the end. If you feel like in a certain day, okay, this week I've got an exam coming up, or I've got a couple quizzes, then I'm going to give myself more time than I think this is going to take, because if things move around, then I might need to spend more time on those quizzes than I will on this background research. So make sure that you're being realistic about how you set those goals for yourself. The next one, and this is really important, especially for the distance learning students, or the ones that, you know, usually attend meetings from home. Clearly define your living space and your workspace. Your bed is not your workspace. So if you are one of those people who get productive in your bed, good for you. But I know personally, I'll kind of just start slipping and sliding and going into the horizontal position, and suddenly you're just somehow on Netflix and you're watching episodes and you're not working on that assignment anymore. So you want to make sure that you have that clear, you know, delineated workspace and living space. Okay, if I'm going to be on my bed, that's my me time. I'm either going to be watching TV or Netflix or something. But if I'm at my desk, or if I'm at the kitchen counter, this is my place for being productive. So that works both ways, right? That also makes you productive, because your brain's sort of conditioned to think this is my productive space, and I'm not falling asleep, or I'm not in a position where I'm feeling sleepy, or I'm too cozy and comfortable. But at the same time, you're not letting your work life bleed into your personal life. So if you're going to be working on stuff while you're still in your bed, when are you going to, you know, set aside that time for, okay, I'm in my bed only when I'm sleeping, versus I'm in my bed when I'm sleeping and I'm eating and I'm working and I'm doing all of those things. This is especially challenging for those of you living in dorms. There isn't a lot of space to be flexible with that, I understand. But you do have places like the library. You do have, you know, some socially distanced study spots around campus where you can probably be a lot more productive and help yourself define that boundary, that when I go back to my room, these are the things I can work on. And when I go back outside, or to my, you know, productive space, that's when I can work on my stuff and be the most active and actually get stuff done. So you make sure that's delineated. Take breaks. It's healthy. It helps you stay focused. You are human and you're not a machine. You are definitely going to need times during the day where you're just like, okay, I worked on this paper for like an hour. I need to sit back. I need to eat some food, maybe go take a walk around the block, stretch out a little bit, watch a comedy special on Netflix or something. Anything that kind of gives you that change of environment, so that when you jump back into your work, you're going in with a fresh set of eyes, a fresh perspective. Because this has happened to me a lot of the times. I don't know if it's happened to y'all, but when you're working on a problem or a certain, you know, homework problem, and you've looked at it for like an hour and you're not able to figure it out, and it's just getting, you know, weird, more and more complicated the more you look at it. But the second you just stop, take a break, I could like go eat food or something. When I come back and look at it, it's like, oh wait, okay, this equation in the textbook makes sense. I can plug it in here and I can get this value, and suddenly things just fall into place. Because sometimes you just need that change in perspective to kind of help you get back on track, because your brain's just too frazzled to look at the same thing over and over again for a long time. So make sure you take breaks. It's going to help you. And yeah, this is where I want to open up and ask y'all what helps you strike that work-life balance, especially if you're working from home. How do you clearly separate that space between this is my workspace, this is my living space, and hold yourself accountable to that.
Hello. So I think like the devices that you use for workspace and like just for entertainment is important too. Like I use my iPad just for productivity and like my phone for entertainment, and I can like scroll on like IG on like my phone, but like I use Teams and Words and on my iPad.
You're muted.
Wait, can you guys hear me? Okay, so like, wait, from which part did you guys not hear me?
I think we heard most of yours. I was talking to Pusha's, or she's muted.
Oh, she's muting. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How long have I been muted for? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, like a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you stop hearing me? I just want to make sure y'all didn't miss anything.
During Shen's story.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead then.
Oh, I kind of finished sharing my thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm sorry about the muting confusion. I don't think I hit anything to mute myself, but oh well, there we go. Another example of technology issues. Things just happen sometimes. Your internet could drop off and you could, get off a call and wouldn't even know. But thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, does anyone have anything else that they use as a coping strategy to avoid overwhelming themselves or, to balance that life, social life and work life?
I live in the dorms, and I know you talked about having like limited space to work and everything. So one thing that I try and do is with my like online classes, if I have something that's meeting over Zoom or if I'm going to be working on a project or something, I'll try and go somewhere, even if it is an online event, just so I'm not, just sitting in my room all day. So I find that that helps.
Right, changing that environment and getting in that productive zone. All right. Does anyone have any other helpful tips that they use? Okay, I'll take that as a no. General meeting etiquette. So this is sort of just some of us may not be used to attending online meetings and may not be used to the etiquettes for that. Some of them are more obvious, and for those of you that have been in online meetings for a while, so you'll know. Keep your mic muted to avoid background noise, especially when you're on a call with 3 or more people. In different platforms, it works differently, but if one person is speaking, the platform will automatically try and mute the other people's voices. So if there's a lot of people speaking at once, it's just going to sound like a lot of like muted, unmuted voices coming through, which is a lot of jumble. So that just kind of requires a bit more of, communication, like, hey, okay, raise your hand, or be like, hey, I have something to say if you're done, instead of just starting to talk together, which it's a lot more easier to do that when you're in person. You can be like, hey, I just want to add in and say this, but you'll need to give a bit more of a verbal indicator before you start speaking on online meetings. And also that part where you can control the people and the environment that you're in. If there's people in your living room that are also speaking, then that's going to be all her in the meeting. So just make sure you're muted and speak or unmute yourself when you're speaking. Keep your video on to stay engaged. If like, obviously, if this is like a skill session setting, I'm not able to look at you guys right now as much as I'd like to, because I'm sharing my screen and I have only one screen. But if you're in a meeting, especially if you're talking to your project partner, it's really important that you keep your camera on, because that gives them something to work off of. Like, there isn't the body language piece of it, obviously, but they can look at your face. It's more engaging in the sense that they have something to look at, because if it's just a blank screen and if something goes wrong, like, you know, like how I got muted just now, if my camera was turned off as well, no one would realize what happened. So just make sure that you have your video on. That really helps with sort of connecting with the people that you're talking to. So even if it's your team members, make sure you do that. Look professional. This goes for your design reviews, meeting with your project partners, or, you know, with your advisors. You want to make sure you're not sitting in the same pajamas that you slept in, and your bedhead is not showing, but, you know, presentable. You don't have to be in a three-piece suit, but as long as it's not clearly like a tank top or you just came back from the gym kind of look, then you're fine. Avoid having inappropriate signs or objects in your background. So if you think something that could be potentially controversial or offensive to a certain group of people, you probably want to take that away from your background, you know, to avoid sort of that awkward or uncomfortable feeling with whoever you might be having a conversation with. Meeting minutes, I want to reiterate that on this as well. Document everything. Your notebook is a really, really important tool for that sense. Make sure that you're talking about, you know, the agenda for the meeting. You are talking about what you plan on having done before your next meeting. Make sure everything is documented. And so whenever you have, you know, like a question or a doubt, like when we met during that meeting, I wasn't sure what the deliverables were or what we decided for a certain, you know, task that you were talking about. Then if you have that down in your notebook, you can quickly turn to it, be like, okay, week 4, we met here. This is what we talked about. And I had typed in that these people said person A and B are going to work on this task. So it makes it a lot more easier if everything's documented, and helps keep everyone on the same page. Prepare a list of questions and concerns to bring up during the meeting. So this goes along with that, you know, check in with your team members if you feel like you're worried about not being able to complete something that you were assigned in time. Bring it up. There's, you know, nothing wrong with that. Everyone has their off week sometimes and they're falling a little bit behind schedule. Make sure to bring that to your team's attention, so it's not like they're left hanging where they're expecting something to be completed by Thursday, but they don't hear back from you until your meeting on Sunday, and everyone's just wondering what happened. And make sure to confirm your next meeting date and time with an agenda. So again, when say you had your meeting on Sunday, make sure, especially if you're one of the teams that doesn't have like a fixed weekly meeting, and if you're the team that tries to do it a week at a time, that you know when you're meeting and what it is you expect everybody to have done by the time you meet. So that meeting time can then be used to troubleshoot, discuss any potential problems, work on something that requires all of you to be there, like making decisions or brainstorming certain ideas, which is better done as a team than as something individually. So I'll leave the link there. I usually have issues sharing my audio with the video, so I'll drop this PowerPoint in the chat so you can take a look at it whenever, and then you can take a look at that video, which is a pretty cool 2-minute video talking about, you know, online meetings and general etiquette for that. Does anyone have any other etiquettes or, you know, stories of pet peeves of people who didn't follow the etiquettes? Any stories about that they feel will be useful to everyone? I want to open up for that right now.
Actually, on my team last semester, my design lead would always start meetings by asking like all the members how they were doing. He called it like a personal check-in, and I feel like that helped us have more of a productive meeting just by like starting off with a hi, how are you doing? How's your week going? Before you jump right into like the business. Just so you know, like, yeah, how everyone's week is going.
Yeah, that's really nice, and that works great in multiple ways, right? It opens up the team members more because they feel like, oh, like other people want to hear, how my week is going. You build a better bond with your team members because then you kind of know the backstory of, okay, this person's had a rough week or this person's had a crazy busy week. How things are going for them. That's a really great idea, actually. I think we could all learn something from that. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone have any other general meeting things that they do that, helps them overall? Nothing new? Oh, well, okay. So this is just to go in hand with that part about not overwhelming yourself. These are obviously unprecedented times, and this is maybe the millionth time you're hearing unprecedented times. But if you do need help, make sure that you not only lean on your team, but you let us TAs know or your advisors know if you need help with something, if you're struggling to cope. And there's obviously CAPS resources always. So these are some helpful links that I think in the particular pandemic situation is really helpful. So if you feel like, you need help with that, make sure to read up on it to have some great pointers there. Just a general sort of blanket statement is if you are not feeling, up to like, if you're feeling under the weather, if you're not feeling up to it, make sure that you communicate that with your team members because that will affect your productivity. It will affect the quality of the work that you do. But it will also, if you talk to your team members about it, it'll help you and the team in general to make sure that, you're not overloaded with something, you're not assigned too much work. And when you talk to us as TAs and advisors, we can always help you kind of cope with these situations better and, find a work around it. So it's not that much of a difficult situation because you're not in this alone. The whole point of having EPICS is that you get to work with a team and you have people to back you up. So make sure to reach out to your resources, your team members, and we'll be there to help. So I'll leave these links in here. I want to open up to any other general questions, or if you feel like you want to discuss any one of the other topics in more further detail, I'll open it up to that now. Oh man, I wish this was in person. Then we would have actually picked on people. Called you out by name. So are there no questions? Everything on the slide makes sense? Yes, no, maybe. Are people still there? I can't see. Okay, people are still here. All right, well, if there are no questions, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I just saw someone type something in the chat. I can't, okay. Yeah, of course. I will drop the attachment in the chat so you guys can have this PDF to refer whenever. And if you do end up having any questions, or if you want to discuss something that you feel like might be, relevant to this topic, or if you want to see added to this, make sure to talk about that. You can use this chat as a discussion thread as well. And then maybe the next time I do the skill session, we can have something new added onto it. But that's all I have for you. I'll hang around for a bit more if people have any questions. But other than that, you're free to go. I'm gonna stop recording.